A lot to discuss as relates to President-elect Donald Trump and this election interference case. Trial attorney Jeremy Rosenthal joining us live to break it all down. Jeremy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gina.
So a lot to dissect. Let's first discuss what the judge did with this dismissal and what it means.
The special prosecutor, Jack Smith, filed a motion to dismiss the case, and the judge approved that. The judge has to approve a dismissal. The judge cannot dismiss a case on their own accord unless there's a legal defect in it. But the judge granted the motion to dismiss. It is dismissed, as they discussed, without prejudice. And what that means is that jeopardy has not attached and that he could, in theory, be prosecuted again. Highly unlikely, but the term prejudice basically means if it's with prejudice, that means you cannot ever come back and prosecute again. If it's without prejudice, that means you can attempt to refile it. Most cases, when they are dismissed in state and federal court, are dismissed without prejudice, and the vast majority of them are just never seen from again.
So knowing this, let's fast forward to President-elect Donald Trump getting sworn in on Inauguration Day, and then we know he has several policies that he wants to implement. Do you see anything happening during his presidency to make sure this does not reappear?
In theory, he could attempt to pardon himself because, again, that liability, the legal liability, is still out there. It's still kind of floating around and hanging over his head. Again, he would be having to trust, if you would, the next administration after he was gone, or even the one after that, to not pick up the ball and carry on. In any event, another issue that he's got in his back pocket is you've also got a right to a speedy trial. So if the Justice Department dismisses the case and says we're not going to go forward on this, and then they hang out and wait for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, well, and then in that instance, Donald Trump could say, look, now my rights to speedy trial have been violated. But again, he could attempt to pardon himself. Whether or not that's legally effective, we just don't know at this point. The Supreme Court would ultimately have to rule on that, but that would always remain an option for him.
Yeah, well, obviously, this dismissal makes President-elect Donald Trump and his team very happy. But across the aisle, Democrats, not so much. They're speaking out this Tuesday morning, Jeremy, saying that what happened yesterday is a failure within the judicial system.
It's certainly unprecedented in American history, what we're all watching. And I think probably the takeaway for viewers and for people is this, and just an overarching lesson, if you will, about the legal system. When you win in court, it's not like the movies. The other side doesn't apologize and admit that they were wrong all along. There's hard feelings to go around, and that's how court is. Right after a long, bitter custody dispute, or after a long car accident litigation case, or after a criminal case where there's an accuser and somebody on trial, those wounds they never really heal, and folks always walk away feeling angry from it. I think if you ask Jack Smith, he would tell you what he really thinks about these cases. He would tell you that he thinks Donald Trump is guilty. He would tell you that that he's not happy about dismissing these things. On the other side of it, yeah, when your cases are dismissed, it's a total victory. Back to Jonathan Turley's point, I mean, in reality, what you had here was the Justice Department, in essence, acknowledging that the American people have spoken. And in some ways, it is kind of a very large jury verdict. It's not the verdict they were hoping for. It's not really the case that they were wanting to try. But again, the people put Donald Trump back in the White House. And for the sake of the country, the Justice Department, Jack Smith, said, OK, we can't do this. And again, I mean, that's just sort of where we are in the legal landscape. But I think there's certainly a lot of hard feelings to go around.
Well, hey, from the very beginning, you said, let's see how this plays out in court. Let's see the judicial system do their job. And that's what we saw play out in real time. Some of the viewers wanting to know how this relates to January 6th. We know several people faced law and order themselves as it relates to what happened on that day. Some of the viewers wanting to know what and how does this impact their cases if people are still facing charges this morning for what happened on January 6th.
It's not going to impact those cases.
Okay.
This dismissal is limited to Donald Trump, and again, they're citing the fact that look, we don't prosecute sitting presidents based on the Department of Justice's policy. Now, when Donald Trump takes the White House, he would have the ability to exercise pardons over anybody who is charged or convicted in federal court. Politically, that could be that might not be what he wants to do, at least not at first. So politically, that could be pretty challenging. When it comes to the January 6th prosecutions, not all of these cases are equal. You have some people who were sort of caught with some pretty unsavory behavior. You also had folks who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think that what you may see is that if he is going to pardon anybody from January 6th, I think you're going to see that he's going to really have to pick and choose those quite carefully. But I don't know that that's going to be priority number one for him. The short answer is Jack Smith's actions yesterday don't affect anybody else other than Donald Trump.
Well, Jeremy Rosenthal, always a pleasure to talk law and order with you here on Live Now from Fox. Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
Look, I mean, this has been a year in the making, and again, everything that we're seeing is sort of unprecedented. Another thing that I don't know that you'll see, and I haven't heard this kicked around very much. Joe Biden could pardon Donald Trump and sort of put an end to it. That's still out there as a plausible option, again, because the case was dismissed without prejudice. And look, this may be on. I don't know that it would be on Joe Biden's orders. I mean, the special prosecutor is not beholden, in theory, to the Department of Justice. So really, this decision, you would think, came from Jack Smith and Jack Smith alone. However, again, you don't know what role the executive had in this. And for the sake of moving on for the country, you could see something like that. So again, I mean, do we want to have a situation where Donald Trump is pardoning himself and then we have a fight over that? Or if we're going to be done with this, let's just be done with it. I think that's probably the national sentiment as we saw in this election. But again, not quite over, 95% over. And in all likelihood, this may be the last we talk about it, but you never know how this may crop up in the future.
Well, we will definitely keep a watchful eye. Jeremy Rosenthal, again, a pleasure speaking with you here on this Tuesday morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Janae.